I've had the good fortune of being involved in massage therapy for quite a while, since 1985, actually 1984. Took my first class in massage therapy and decided that maybe I'd add this to my practice. I was trained as a chiropractor, and as you get into chiropractic, why, you find out that you have a lot of explaining to do. How many of you have had chiropractic care? Good. The rest of you need it. How many have had a massage? Anybody not raise their hand? Obviously. If I'd asked this question, you would not have been in massage therapy school 20 years ago for massage therapy. Of the number that are in the room here, probably 2 of you would have raised your hand. That's how much has changed in 15 years. Generally speaking, you would find out that more than half of an audience, that in the future, if you were to give a presentation and you would ask that same question, how many of you have had a massage? They would have raised their hand. So thanks to Paulette for continuing the efforts of providing the best possible massage therapy education. You'll continue to see that. And so I encourage you to think of that when you're out there, that you have a responsibility not only to generate a clientele, but to also educate the public, making them aware of what we had to go through many years ago, convincing people that it was something more than what they might have had in their mind it being, and that it was a health-related kind of a service. That wasn't the thought many years ago. So thank God that's changed. Again, I appreciate being here. Every time I come back, whether it's as a teacher or a presenter, or 2 weekends ago as a student coming back for continuing education hours, I appreciate the opportunity to be here, be in this positive environment, and be recharged so I can go out there again and be the kind of sharing, caring kind of therapist that I try to encourage others to be. So I want you to think of that also. As I told you, I've been involved in massage therapy for quite a few years. My initial experience was that patients would tighten up when I get ready to adjust them. And I'll talk about chiropractic later. We'll get to that and to my charts here. But patients would tend to tighten up. And so I realized way back when I was an orderly in a hospital more years ago than I think all of you are of age, well, maybe 1 or 2 of us. But the idea is that we were then, at that time, we gave back rubs. I was an orderly. Every night I had 4 to 6 patients that I gave a back rub to. Any of you in the nursing profession currently, or in the healing arts in that area, or working in a hospital? You know that they don't give back rubs anymore. They discontinued that many years ago. But what I found is that the patients that I was assigned the 2nd and 3rd or 4th night, they would literally be standing in their doorway looking, waiting, and wondering, and they were not supposed to be out of their bed. And I was very privileged to find out that they were waiting for their back rub. And so I'm sure you'll find that the same situation when you get into your private practices, that people are literally going to follow you to death's door, interestingly. I've had some patients now who I've had almost 20 years. All of those patients that I've had more than 15 years are all massage therapy clients. And I'm sure come in primarily for chiropractic care, they better, or they come in for the massage. And what I found is that as I added the massage techniques that I had incorporated or I'd learned from the nursing profession in the hospital before I would give an adjustment, that the patients would relax, they'd hold their adjustments longer, they wouldn't have to come in so often, and they seemed to feel better. And so I realized that I needed to continue adding this, but then what I developed is a practice that I couldn't keep up with, and so I looked for some others to help me, especially when one of the patients or several of the patients indicated that could you just do the massage and forget about that cracking? And that kind of, oh, really? My profession. But then I obviously looked for someone who I could train, or I took the training myself and I looked for someone else to train, and then that person became my assistant, so to speak, working with patients, doing the massage that I really didn't have the time to do at that when I first began my practice. As a result of that, the lady that I brought on in my practice, she decided that she needed more extensive training, so she left for 6 months, went off for got training in another state. At that time, we did not have a residential training program in Nebraska. There was no such thing. It was all apprenticeship. Apprenticeship meaning that you could take the basic classes, but that you had to then find someone who would supervise you for an entire 500 hours. Realizing that one therapist could only supervise one apprentice at one time, and so like 1 or 2 people got trained a year. That was obviously not very effective. Naturally, that's changed. So we decided to open a program where we trained a lot of people, because as I trained assistants to help me in my practice, they ventured off on their own, because I was in Iowa at the time. Iowa didn't require a license, so they basically could practice about anywhere. Nebraska did. We had a lot of interest from Nebraska, so at that time we aligned our program to accommodate students who wanted to be licensed in Nebraska, and then got our school approved in Nebraska. So basically decided to then expand our program, incorporate all those things that we felt were important to our students. We had a lot of interest from students who had to save to go to school, a lot of interest from students who didn't have the money to go to school. What we ended up doing basically is applying for federal financial aid. And once we acquired federal financial aid, things seemed to change. By that I mean our whole complexity, and Paulette and I have talked about this, and she's well aware of it, and she's way ahead of the program. We weren't. We weren't prepared for what federal financial aid did to us. Basically, it forced us to focus on dotting the I's and crossing the T's and get away from the personal training that we provided our students. So everything had to be geared toward the minute that you arrived for class and the minute that you left class, and documenting that 3 to 4 times over, in addition to everything else. We no longer had control of who we could keep and who we couldn't, and we no longer had control of a lot of different things. So decided that after long hours of frustration and the motivation that my wife gave me, we better get out of this. We did. So in 1995, we decided to close the school that I had and take our lives back, meaning that I went back into private practice, continued as I was doing before. By that time, several schools had also started up, so we basically didn't leave the field empty. Others came on board who obviously picked up the gauntlet and have obviously continued to train excellent therapists. So what I found out is that sometimes you get what you ask for, and we asked for financial aid. We got a lot more than we asked for, in addition to we got the federal government on your back. And if you've ever been involved with the federal government, in a positive way I mean, it's still not very positive. It's very negative. And so as long as you can keep a balance and watch for the trees and watch for the forest and not get hung up on the trees, why generally it'd be okay. So in the future, if you're thinking of small business loans, or look into it very, very thoroughly. You can't imagine how much red tape there is involved anytime you work with the state or federal government. I speak from 400 years of experience. No, 200 from our country. But the sad thing of it is that they are there to help, and they do help, and a lot of our students did benefit from financial aid, but there, in every benefit, there's some drawbacks. And so, again, that's my little bit on why I got out of massage therapy. Many other people have thought there's other reasons, but you can go and ask my wife, and she'll tell you why. It basically, well, she'll tell you a lot more than I did. But anyway, my interest in massage therapy continued. I continued to offer graduate education courses, and I continue now again and started over again graduate education courses. For the last 4 years, I spent as a chiropractor at the base hospital. About 8 years ago, the Air Force or the military began to incorporate chiropractic as a service, as a benefit to the military members, which I think is fabulous and fantastic. Chiropractic has grown immensely. It has been associated with, or most insurance companies cover chiropractic. In the state of Nebraska, as in about 18 other states, we're referred to as chiropractic physicians. And that's of benefit because in order to get reimbursed from the federal government, again, from Medicare or Medicaid, you have to be a physician to be able to get reimbursed. And so obviously it qualifies for that. Before I get started, I'd like to ask a few more questions. Why did you choose massage therapy?
To heal people.
Good.
Make them feel healthy.
Okay. Yeah?
It's good for children.
Children? Okay. Any particular area? Children in general? Okay.
Children in general.
Okay. Anyone else on this side of the room want to? Yes, ma'am.
I benefited from massage therapy, so maybe I could help other people.
Good. That's good. Yes, sir.
People like the back rubs I give.
Good. That's a good reason, too. That's a very good reason because that's what's going to cause most people to come see you. They like back rubs. They like the feeling of somebody's hands on them. The saddest thing in our society as a small child, we begin with constant contact with our parents, our hands-on. As we age, that may be shared by a spouse, but however, as we get older, it diminishes to almost nothing. As I'm sure many of you have grandparents realize that the amount of touch that they get on a daily basis is marginal or minimal at best. We are a society of none-touch people. By that I mean they did a survey many years ago, and they took several different societies. They went to France and they watched 4 people sitting at a table and to watch if there's any touching or any sharing or any contact during the meal. During an hour of the meal, how many times would any of you guesstimate that these 4 people touched one another? Start on this side of the room.
Where was this?
In France. 20, 30. They did the same thing in Spain. They sat and watched, and they observed again. How many times do you think people touched people in Spain? Now, they went to England. They watched and they watched and they watched the entire hour. How many people touched each other during that hour? 0. They did the same thing in the United States. They watched 4 people for an hour at a luncheon, and how many times do you think they touched each other? The same goose egg. 15 to 16 times in France, 15 to 16 times in Spain, but none in the US or England. As I said, we're a non-touch society. There's no reason for that, and you are the conduit through which that's going to change, we hope. And it has changed a lot. If they did this survey now, this was 15 years ago, if they did the survey now, they'd probably find something different. They also did a survey of thousands of medical doctors, internal medicine practitioners, and they got 7,000 responses. And one of the 3 questions that they asked them on a weekly basis, what percent of patients come to you that you find something physically wrong with? Anybody over here?
10% of the time.
10%? Absolutely right. On a daily basis, on a weekly basis, the patient that go to an internal medicine or a family practice or general practitioner, the number of times that they can physically find something wrong with that patient who came in for some problem was 10% of the time. Interesting. Now, the next question is even more important. What do they do with the other 90%? The patient expects a pill. Okay, now what did they give the patient? What kind of pill did they give the patient? An antidepressant? What's the most prescribed medication on the face of the earth 15 years ago? What was it? Valium. Valium, Valium, Valium. What is it today? Zoloft and Prozac. So 90% of the time, if there's nothing physically wrong with you, they're going to assume there's something mentally wrong with you or emotionally wrong with you. So they're going to prescribe an antidepressant. But guess what? There's even one more important question. They went on and asked the doctors, of the patients that you find nothing physically wrong with, what would you like to have done with that patient? And the answer was interesting. The answer was that I wish I had 45 minutes to sit and listen to the patient, to talk about their family problems, their relationship problems, their work problems, and just problems in general. So 45 minutes they would like to have taken to listen to that patient. This is significant to massage therapists because guess what you have? When a client comes in, you have 45 minutes to an hour to take the opportunity to listen to that patient. So you, in turn, will be providing an antidepressant service. Okay? Think of that. When you're working with clients, you will actually be saving the client from the toxicities that are occurring in every drug that they're prescribed. Isn't that neat? Just by laying hands on. They found that just laying hands on changes the endorphin production in the body by several 100%. Just laying on of hands. Endorphins do what to the body? They suppress pain. They cause relaxation, the body's ability to heal itself. So with that in mind, I want to congratulate you again for selecting the field of massage therapy, because obviously you are the real healers of the future. Laying on of hands, there's no question about it, is the way that alternative health is certainly looking much more favorably than it has in the past. They did additional studies. They've got a new agency in the federal government, and it's alternative care professions. And the surveys that they did with that, they found out that of all the different alternative professions, chiropractic was number one, massage therapy was number two. So again, you fall right up in the very top of what people consider when they consider alternative medicine. So chiropractic, though, is light years behind where it should be in the eyes of the public. Unfortunately, probably less than 17% of all people have ever had or experienced chiropractic care. If your spine is not in line, you have again, you could have some major medical problems. I certainly found that out myself because in 1969, again, maybe before some of you have been born, I was in a car accident in Germany. My wife and I were driving through Munich. We got off the Autobahn, drove into town, came to a traffic light. The light turned red, we stopped. The light turned green, I took off. The car from the right didn't mind that the light was red, It continued right into the intersection. I smacked into the car. My head hit the windshield. I felt a pop in my neck. And for the rest of our vacation, headache and pain persisted. I got back to the hospital. I was one of the hospital administrators in Germany at the time. And so my friends were the doctors. Merely ask them and they will give you a prescription. I got a prescription for pain. I took it. It didn't seem to do much good. The headache, I got a prescription for headaches. It didn't seem to do much good. I eventually got allergies. It persisted into hay fever. I got a prescription for that. I went 4.5 years, at least a dozen medical doctors, for different kinds of treatment. One of the treatments that I was evaluated for was allergies. I was stuck with 87 pins. I was allergic to almost everything on the face of the earth. And the doctor said, you've got to live in a room without carpet. You've got to have no draperies on the windows. The bed had to be encased in plastic. It had to be a metal frame bed. I had to have filtered air into the room, and that's how I was supposed to live the rest of my life. That was only about 2 paragraphs of a 4-page instruction I was supposed to live by the rest of my life. And I tried it. It didn't work. It was like living in prison. I continued to search for answers. I talked to people, and the best they could offer is more drugs with more side effects and more problems. Finally, somebody suggested I go to a chiropractor. I went to a chiropractor after 4 months again of being discouraged, and finally I decided, it's my body. Let me decide. I don't need to consult with my doctor. It's me. It's my health. And so I did. I went to Dr. Jenkins on Blue Ridge Drive in Kansas City in 1974, July 12th. Anyway, went in there, got an examination, the most thorough exam I had ever had. Twisted, bent, poked, prod, blood pressure, everything under the sun he took. None of the other doctors did anything. There wasn't even an examination, unfortunately, except the poking with the pins, that I felt. He indicated that he'd need to take some x-rays. He zeroed in on the accident that I had. None of the other doctors asked me even about the accident I was in that started all this. I didn't realize that until this chiropractor asked me the questions. He then asked me about the accident. When he took the x-rays, the following day I came in, he went through his report of finding. He says, this is what I found. You've got a 1st, 2nd cervical subluxation that's causing your headaches. You've got a 5th cervical subluxation that's causing the unable to turn your head. And you've got a 7th cervical and a 1st thoracic that's causing the numbness and tingling down your arms. And a 4th thoracic that's causing your allergies. I thought, this guy is absolutely bananas. I've been to the best. Been examined by doctors who graduated from Harvard, Yale, the Air Force only took the best. And none of them found anything like this. He says, you're going to have to lay on this table, and I'm going to have to move those vertebrae back in place. And any of you that have had an adjustment probably know that this is what my spine looked like. This is the way it's supposed to be. There's supposed to be a nice forward cervical curve. 17 degrees that's supposed to be, as you can see on the normal picture here. Mine was not. It was straight up and down. What do you think that does to the nerves that come out in the side there, in the back? It closes off the hole or the opening. Therefore, you're going to have pressure on your nerves. I did. I definitely had some pressure at these 3 levels. And then you can't see, but down into the thoracic as well, down in here. He said he had to move those. Any of you remember your first cervical adjustment? What did you think?
Scared me.
Scared you? You too? Me too. When he adjusted he started at the lower, when he adjusted the 7th cervical, I thought, this isn't too bad. Then he got to the middle one. And I thought for sure my head was going to fly off. When he got to the very top, I was sure it flew off because I saw stars. And I had electricity shoot down my entire body instantaneously. I started on that table with an eye-flashing, pulsating headache that I could hardly see straight when I started. And I'd been like this for years. Not quite as severe, because some of the drugs did kind of put me on cloud 9 for a while. When I got up, it took him about 30 seconds to adjust all those 3 vertebrae. 30 seconds versus 4.5 years of misery. I literally got up, turned my head as I couldn't turn before. I almost felt the headache disappear out through the top of my head. The tingling in my arms was still there, but this was miraculous to me. This was enough. But then he said, you got to come back. I want you to see you tomorrow, and I want to see you the rest of this week, and next week, and next week, and next week. I thought, he didn't get it, he didn't fix it, he doesn't think it's going to work. But I found out that the bone was so far out of place for so long, it takes a while to repeat that treatment before it'll hold the position it's supposed to be in. And so eventually it did. It held, and even to this day, every Tuesday I go to Council Bluffs. I got 5 or 6 other friends of mine, chiropractors. What do we do every Thursday or every Tuesday? I get this readjusted. Why? Because I don't want ever to have a headache come back. I don't ever want to have restriction of motion in my neck, and I don't like tingling down my arms. And I certainly didn't like the asthma that I was progressing towards that he totally reversed. So my thought was, my intention is to try to keep my health. And that's what I would encourage you to do. Once you get your health back, don't let somebody try to talk you out of doing what you're doing if you're feeling good about it. Okay? So hopefully you've had some experiences that if they've been with chiropractic, they've been good experiences. Unfortunately, some patients go and they feel a little bit of pain afterwards, and they don't go back. Well, he hurt me. Well, what's better, or as I've tried to impress on some patients, would you rather hurt a little afterwards and eventually not have that hurt, or would you prefer to wait until something goes wrong when you'll have to have surgical intervention? It progresses. It doesn't stop here. The cervical spine progresses. The discs in between here start to collapse. As it progresses further, you get spurring on the tips there, and then you eventually get a solid mass of bone in the cervical spine. That's what would happen if you didn't get your neck fixed, so to speak, if you had a cervical injury. How many of you have been in car accidents? Every one of you have cervical problems, I can assure you. If you've ever been in a car accident, your neck looks probably like this and maybe even like this. My point is that it's important to take care of your body. And if you don't take care of your neck, your head will fall off. That's a joke. No, it's not. What? It actually does. What holds your head on? There's one bone in here. You've already had anatomy, right? What sticks up in the middle of C2? It's called the odontoid process. If you've ever had, I'm sure you haven't, if you've ever known anyone that had the odontoid process broken or fractured, they're going to be paralyzed for the rest of their life if they don't get that taken care of immediately. And a good friend of mine, son literally was a swimming lifeguard at one of the swimming pools in town here. And at the end of the shift, why, their big deal is to get up on the high dive and dive up as high as they can go out and as far out as they can go. And his son did that. And he went way, way out beyond the deep section and went into the shallow section and like slid down the embankment, so to speak, from the shallow to the deep section. And his father called me, and he said, I took him to the hospital. He's just not feeling so well. He went to the hospital, and they didn't do anything. They literally, fine, give you some pills for pain, send him on home. I said, no, no, no. You need to take him back in there, get some x-rays. And they still wouldn't do any x-rays. I said, take him downtown. So this was the base hospital, basically. They took him downtown, and sure enough, they did x-rays. And they saw a fracture of the odontoid. And guess what? He was in a halo collar for about 3 months. Fortunately, they found it. Had he not gone back, the kid would have been paralyzed within a couple of days from the neck down. So anytime you hear or encounter a person who, hopefully you don't in your practice, but anyone that needs that, they need to have x-rays, medical attention. They need to push the issue, so to speak, until they finally get good health care. There's many stories about health care. I don't want to bore you, but what I do need to tell you is that this chart here, this is 170 pages of anatomy right here on that chart. And you've got that in your notes there. The spine here, there's 7 cervical, 12 thoracic, and 5 lumbar, and then you have the sacrum. If you look on the chart that I gave you there, you'll see that at the very first cervical there, the nerves come out of there, and what do? They go to different parts of the body. They go to the brain, they go to scalp, face, head. And if you have a nerve that's pinched there, what kind of symptoms are you going to create? If you have a nerve that's pinched at one level, then whatever function or whatever condition is supposed to control will basically be a problem, a health problem. If you take a pill or a potion, how does the pill or potion know where to go, what to do? How does it know the name and address of the health problem you've got? It doesn't. For instance, how many of you ever taken muscle relaxants for some sort of an injury, some sort of stress or strain? Taking a muscle relaxant, how many muscles do you have in your body? 637. They haven't been able to design a muscle relaxant that knows the name and address of that muscle that's in spasm. So what happens? You take a muscle relaxant, it goes into your system. What muscle attracts it? The muscle that is the most active. What's your most active muscle? Your heart. Heart beats constantly. So what happens to the heart? It takes on this reduction of muscle function. So your heart slows down because you took the muscle relaxant. What about the muscle that's in spasm? Why is it in spasm? Because there's no oxygen flowing through it. If there's no oxygen, then there's no blood. So you've got a muscle relaxant that's supposed to relax a muscle that it can't even get into. So the story is that you're getting no benefit from the muscle relaxant. The only thing it's making you do is lay down, or it should, because your heart has slowed down 40 to 60%. What happens to the athlete that can't lay down? Young athlete or senior citizen athlete or any athlete that's taken a muscle relaxant, they've slowed their hearts down 40%, and they're still trying to produce at 70% or 80 or 100. What happens? Heart attack. Heart attack. Young kids having heart attacks. What do you think they're having them for? Why are they having them? It's a good possibility that the muscle relaxants, you could ask just about any parent of this child who expired on the field and they were on some sort of medication, most of which was slowing down the heart function. It's not worth it. I would, again, hopefully you'll understand that what you do with ice and massage is much more effective than what any drug could do for any kind of muscle tension problem. So I encourage you to think of muscles when you think of people that are in pain or having soreness, and that you, as some of the massage techniques, certainly basic massage, Swedish massage, is more than adequate to help a person. May take a few more visits or a few more times, but than a myofascial session, but certainly is of benefit to that. Let me ask another question. How many knew John Ritter or knew of John Ritter? What did he die from? Heart disease? He had a clogged artery, or what the medical profession found out, that he had an aneurysm that exploded. What caused the aneurysm? What causes most disease in most bodies most of the time? Pardon? Stress. How many of you are familiar with Dr. Wallach, the tape Dead Doctors Don't Lie. Very, very interesting tape. What Dr. Wallach has found out in doing autopsies on 17,000 animals, he was a veterinarian before he became a naturopathic doctor, is that most death is the result of nutritional deficiency. And in this case, for John Ritter, the deficiency that he was, or the mineral that he was deficient in was copper. Had he had copper in his system, as Dr. Wallach found out, on a turkey farm, the farmer bought $500,000 turkeys to raise. 200,000 of them died the first year. Dr. Wallach was called in to find out why they died. He found out that they had an aneurysm. What they had substituted was, rather than a healthy nutritional diet from vitamins, from natural vitamins and minerals, they had substituted synthetic vitamins and minerals. And by substituting the synthetic, caused the arteries in the body to be weakened. So John Ritter died because of a copper deficiency. Obviously, you'll never see that in print because that's not, they don't believe it. Johnny Cash. What did Johnny Cash die from? He had complication of diabetes, developed pneumonia, and basically died. What nutrition or vitamin or mineral was he deficient in? Pardon? Okay, yeah, that's true, very true. One is not enough, you need most of them. But specifically chromium. Chromium would have helped him immensely, would have actually helped reverse diabetes. Much of the things that we have in our society can and have been in other societies reversed. We only practice one form of healthcare in the United States. The healthcare we provide is drugs and surgery. No interest in alternative or natural health or preventive care. It's all after the fact. And so, Linus Pauling. Anybody know Linus Pauling or remember Linus Pauling? What's he famous for?
Vitamins.
Vitamin. Which vitamin?
C.
Vitamin C, absolutely. The king of vitamin C. When he came up with this 40, 50 years ago, why, they thought he was quack and ridiculous, and none of this made any sense. And fortunately, he lived to be about 99 years old, and all of his critics, the medical doctors and all the scientific critics died 40 to 50 years before he did. Now, who do you think was on the right track? They did an autopsy when he died. They found his arteries as clean as a child's. No plaquing. Every muscle, everything in his body was totally toned. Not sure why he died, but he did, of old age, if that's a cause. But interestingly, much of what you're going to encounter is going to be counter to what you've already experienced in healthcare or associated with healthcare. So I'd encourage you to look deeper than what may be on the surface. And the internet is fabulous. There's so much information now on the internet that you can find. Much of it is on alternative health, and I'd encourage you, as I have patients on a daily basis, ask me questions about various kind of medications. I had a lady in a week ago, and she was in again this week. Her daughter had a baby. The baby was hospitalized a couple of weeks after birth. Survived 2 weeks in the hospital, got home, was home for about 3-4 weeks, and then went in for the baby check, 2 weeks or 6-week baby check. And the pediatrician was insisting on starting vaccinations or immunizations. Unfortunately, or fortunately, the grandmother was with the daughter, whose baby was in for health care, had picked up an article out of a magazine in this doctor's office that indicated that is currently the recommendation by the American Pediatric Society is that you do not start immunizations till the child is at least 6 months old. The immune system is not capable of handling that, they don't call it, that toxicity that early in life. And so the grandmother objected. She said no, they didn't want to start the immunizations. And the doctor went into orbit. I'm sure some of the words used I won't repeat here, but what do you know about healthcare? What do you know about medicine? I'm the doctor here, and where'd you read that kind of nonsense? Well, it was in your magazine, in your office, out front that I read it. Well, they don't know what they're talking about. I've been practicing for 30 years and I've never heard anything hogwash like that. And literally they said, fine, if you don't mind, we're going to wait. My thought was, they need to find another doctor. And unfortunately, I don't think the daughter's going to do that, but that's totally another issue. But you need to do some research. In my frank opinion, I've got 3 books that I loaned this grandmother, all of which say vaccinations do absolutely no good. There's never been a scientific study that showed that vaccinations stopped anything from anybody. And there's books and the scientific research, book after book after book. A shot in the dark is one. Vaccination at your own risk. You can go on and on and on and on about how that has no value whatsoever. The flu shot, the popular thing right now. If I'm healthy, why would I want to line up to get the flu? Because what are they giving you in the flu shot? They're giving you the flu. I'd like to see the day when let's start a AIDS virus shot, an AIDS shot. Let's see how many people line up for getting the AIDS virus. I bet there isn't a medical doctor or health professional in their right mind that would be willing to do that, because they're giving you the disease, whether you believe it or not. So the point is think before you jump and leap, and before it's too late. And I'm not saying anything against AIDS, it's just that that's the same thing is true with any other shot, any other vaccination. I know that you're between a rock and a hard place when it comes to, if you have children, to get them into school without these vaccinations, but it can be done. So, and if that's your choice. Being into natural health, and you may be way too soon in your career to be able to withstand any of the kind of pressure that you're going to get from family members and from others. But give you this early in your exposure to alternative health so that you become aware of it, or become interested and read more about it. Most Americans are dehydrated. 37% of Americans, the thirst mechanism is weak and is often mistaken as hunger. So if you're hungry, if you would drink a glass of water, your hunger might dissipate. Even mild dehydration slows down one's metabolism by 3%. 1 glass of water will shut down midnight hunger pangs almost 100% of the time. Lack of water is the #1 trigger for daytime fatigue. Drink water, which I'll have a sip of right now. And thank you. Where are we at here? 8 to 10 glasses of water a day could significantly ease back the joint pain that in 80% of the sufferers. Wouldn't that be interesting? Instead of the medications that they prescribe, drink water. There's a company out there that says you can lose weight if you drink water before you go to bed instead of eating, which is, if you did that, if you just drank water, obviously you would lose weight. They claim if you drink their product and don't eat anything for 4 hours before you go to bed, why you lose weight. Well, guess what? If you just drank water, you'd lose weight and you didn't eat anything. A mere 2% of the body, drop in the body water can trigger fuzzy, short-term memory, trouble with the basic math, difficulties focusing on the computer screen and on the printed page. I think I'm lacking it right now. I don't seem to be able to focus. No. The 5 glasses of water a daily will decrease colon cancer by 45%. It'll also slash the risk of breast cancer by 79%. And 50% less likely to have bladder cancer if you drink at least 5 glasses of water a day. Now let's see what Coke does to you. Highway Patrol carry Coke, 2 gallons of Coke in their trunk to remove blood from a highway scene. They also, a T-bone steak will dissolve in a bowl of Coke in 2 days. It's used as a toilet cleaner. Isn't that great? To use Coke as toilet cleaner? It'll clean your toilet. The real thing will really clean it. Leave it in there for an hour. It'll remove rust spots and the chrome of your bumpers of your car. It'll also clean the corrosion off your battery terminals in your car. It'll loosen rusty bolts. It'll bake a moist ham with it, and it'll break down and soften the ham. It removes grease from your clothing, cleans haze off your windshield. It also dissolve a nail within 4 days. You think of what it's doing to your stomach. And it'll also, when trucks traverse the interstate highways, they have to have a hazardous material plate card on the vehicle when they're carrying Coke. Interesting. So I give you some ideas. When you tell your clients to drink water, you can certainly interject occasionally, you know, if you want to dissolve nails, drink Coke. If you want to heal your body, drink water. By drinking Coke, in addition to what the real thing is, they also have an imitation of it, which is when they put in some sort of sweetener. And I've given you a flyer or a handout there on aspartame, if you can find that. How many are familiar with what aspartame can or can't do? How many have heard of aspartame? Okay, one, okay, two. It's diet, yeah. When you drink, I won't even ask this question, but think about it. If I were to ask you how many would raise your hand if I said how many drink Diet Cola? Don't raise your hand, just think about it. If you would, you need to read this. You really need to read this. What does any aspartame, which is in the sweeteners, any of the sweeteners, if the temperature raises above 86 degrees, it turns to wood alcohol, and the aspartame then converts to formaldehyde. What is formaldehyde used for? Embalming people. So if you want to be embalmed, drink the diet drinks. And then it converts to formic acid. Yes, ma'am.
Can you substitute any of the Diet Cola drinks?
Any diet drink. Any diet drink. In fact, any of 500 other products that also have aspartame in them, that has the sweeteners, the sugars, that have sweeteners instead of sugar. You'd be much better off just taking regular sugar. Absolutely. There's
Sugarless gums and stuff like that.
sugarless gum. The cereals that you eat, everything that you eat has sweeteners in it because it is no longer the patent ran out on it several years ago, and now everybody and their brother is making some kind of a aspartame product.
What about the new Splenda?
The what? Splenda? Supposedly that's supposed to be derived directly from sugar, and why not the real thing? You know, or honey. Honey is, there's books written on the benefits of honey, and so you don't need to worry about, but again, as I said, you need to be cautious as to what you eat because it could have aspartame in it. And the unfortunate thing is that some of the diseases that they've associated with is multiple sclerosis. Why? Because it's, again, anesthetizing the body, or it's putting the body into formaldehyde where its rigor mortis begins to set in and the functions begin to the nerve function begins to dissipate. So ideally, and what they found is that they get the person off of the diet colas and the symptoms disappear. So it doesn't matter whether they've got a scientific study to show this or not, it's the results. If you stop doing something and it changes, why obviously then that must be the cause of the condition. So stopping it can help a great deal. And as you see down in the middle of the paragraph where there's one column on the right-hand side, if you're using NutraSweet or Equal or Spoonful or whatever else they've come up with, you could suffer from fibromyalgia. So you can work with fibromyalgia patients forever. They won't change if they don't change their diet. They have got to get off diet colas, diet drinks. Same thing with people with different pains, numbness in their legs, cramps, dizziness, vertigo, headaches, ringing in the ears, joint pain, depression, anxiety attacks, slurred speech, blurred vision, memory loss, all are aspartame diseases. The reason they know that is when they take the person off of this, they begin to change dramatically. Their health improves significantly. Towards the end of the next page, it's also associated with Alzheimer's disease. Again, the studies have shown that people that drink lots of diet drinks will be early Alzheimer's patients. Dr. Roberts wrote a book on it, and after many scientific studies to show that. Also, at the very end of that, it talks about Desert Storm, and if you have family members that were in Desert Storm or know of anybody that was, there's a good possibility that if they drank the Diet Coke that the Coke company put on the runway, several thousand pallets of Diet Coke, it sat there in 120 degrees temperature. So while it was sitting on the runway for weeks or months at a time at 120 degrees, it was turning into formaldehyde and formic acid and eventually arsenic. Arsenic is the byproduct of a long-term exposure to heat that any diet drink or aspartame product has. So I'm sure you just love to hear all this great stuff about your favorite drinks, but keep that in mind. There's water, getting back to the Coke versus water. Remind your clients that they will benefit more by continuing to drink water and even coffee. Coffee is, they've done many, many studies with coffee, and they haven't found it to be anywhere near as toxic as other drinks, like, as I said, Coke. I got this email just a couple weeks ago, talks about I've learned, is at the top of the page there. And one of the things that struck me, and the reason I passed this out today, is that the best classroom in the world is the feet of elderly people. I don't know if that refers to me or to what, but I certainly have learned a great deal from others that have been in the field of massage therapy. And although in many cases they were my junior, I've still learned a great deal from most everyone I meet. I've had occasion where I've talked to individuals, either massage therapists or chiropractors who've gone to a seminar where they said they didn't learn a thing. It was a waste of time. Well, that's never happened to me. I've learned so much from so many people that it's amazing if you just open your mind. And if you only got one thing out of it, if you only change one thing about what you were doing or learn one more thing, as I did 2 weeks ago with the seminar that Diana McBain and Douglas Lee Regehr gave on myofascial release, I've added a number of those things to my practice already. I mean, it's like you go back and take what you've learned and apply it Monday morning. And so I'd encourage you to continue your education. Now, don't stop now, you're just beginning. So should have an article there on cesarean section. Again, there's just about every topic, every condition, more than likely there's an area where we are not treating conditions, treating the cause of problems, we basically treat the symptoms. And C-section in the United States is probably the most unnecessary surgery there is. When I was going to graduate school, getting my master's degree in hospital administration, back in 1970, 71, 72, the cesarean section rate at that time was 2.5 nationally, 2.5. Today is 37%. Do you think people are sicker now, women are sicker, more incapable of having babies now? What's the reason that it's 37% now and it wasn't that 10 years ago, 15 years ago? How about a little green stuff? or the doctor had to be gone. The doctor didn't want to be there. Amazingly, midwives, the percent of cesarean section with midwives is less than 1%. They have to refer out for that, obviously, but in most cases, the natural way is the right way. Anybody here from Iowa? Anybody from Red Oak or in that area? If you look on the side there, it shows you Red Oak, Iowa, Montgomery City Hospital. Their cesarean section rate is 50%. Look down in, anybody from Shenandoah area, Shenandoah, Iowa? The cesarean section rate for Shenandoah, Iowa is 44.1. Don't have your baby in Shenandoah, okay? Interesting. A lot of the information that I shared with you hopefully will be of benefit to you. If you have any questions, I think my name and address or phone number or something's on there. Most of those. The form that I have